Hello, welcome to another episode of The High Ground, powered by Premier Companies. Jeff, how are you today?
I'm wonderful, Sal. How are you?
Doing outstanding.
Who do you got for us today?
Somebody very important, one of our returning guests.
Awesome.
Dr. Bret Marsh. Dr. Marsh, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you joining us. Dr. Marsh is the dean of Purdue University's Veterinary Medicine School and also the CEO of Purdue Veterinary Hospital. So glad to have you on here, and formerly the state veterinarian. So you were on with us last August, and glad to have you back.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, there's been a lot happened since August. I can't believe it was that long ago. My gosh, time has really flown. So, but a lot of transition in my world, and I hope things are well on your end.
They are. But before we get started, I think this is our listeners' favorite part, is the question of the day. And our question of the day today, Dr. Marsh, is what is something you believe was very important as a kid, but there turned out to not be a very big deal as an adult?
Boy, I tell you, you really stressed me on this one. I had to think about this a little bit. But you know, one thing that was really important and a big, big deal when I was little, and not so much today, are birthdays.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That was a really big deal when I was a kid. You couldn't wait, and there would be gifts and a cake and candles and all that. And as I get older, I just soon celebrate someone else's birthday than mine. So.
That's a good one.
That is. That's I'd like to say that was my answer. So,
Yeah,
exactly. So.
Well, that's a
but
good
you
one.
stressed me. I had to think about that one a little bit. But yeah, that used to be a really big deal and couldn't wait. And of course, that's long before Amazon, when you could deliver anything any day of the week. You waited for your birthday. That's when you had special gifts and that sort of thing. So today, yes, as I get older, I just soon someone else have their birthday than mine.
That's good. Well, Jeff, what do you got?
And unlike our guest, Sal doesn't give me these until right before the podcast, so I don't have a lot of time to think about it. But so I grew up in Madison County, and over in Hamilton County, there's a little town by the name of Arcadia. And when I was a little kid, I would hear my parents talk about Arcadia. And so in my mind, I thought, I asked them one day, I said, "What is Arcadia?" They said, "Well, it's a town." So in my mind, I thought that, Arcadia was spelled Arcadia. I took it as our, O-U-R. So I thought that, as an adult, you have a little town that's kind of yours. So I was always curious about what is my town going to be when I'm an adult? And then you get older and you realize that, yeah, you were completely going down the wrong path. So not exactly the answer you were probably looking for this question, but that's the first thing that popped into my mind was I just thought I'll have an Arcadia when I get older.
I mean, like last year, did you figure that out?
It was last year, but that's beside the point, Sal. I'm still looking for my town.
That's a pretty good one.
Okay, Sal, what's yours?
Well, mine, I was trying to think of, didn't know, but a little bit different. I thought, when I was a kid, we was always like looking for quicksand, and, I really thought we'd be hitting more quicksand.
Yeah, that is true.
Because
it was on like every cowboy movie.
Every single one. The Lone Ranger, was getting pulled out of quicksand. Every cowboy movie was just stuck in quicksand. Horses were stuck. Everybody was stuck. And we all knew how not to fight quicksand. We knew how to get out of it. We just never encountered it.
So that's a survival skill you never got to use?
That and defending yourself against sharks, So, yeah, those things never really happened in Indiana.
That's true. That is true.
That's right. Those are good. That's great.
Well, Dr. Marsh, get us started here. You give us your history before, but it is so interesting. If you could tell us again, as we'll have some other questions here later that'll kind of circle us back to the veterinary school of medicine. But you were the tell us about the state veterinarian and then the path back to Purdue and being the dean of veterinary medicine school.
Well, it's been a fascinating journey, and it's still continuing. I've told people that Purdue University taught us to be lifelong learners, and I'm just trying to uphold my end of the deal. So staying busy. But I grew up in Boone County, east of Lebanon in Boone County, Indiana, and had a great experience there. Went off to high school in Sheridan. But I had great mentors at the Lebanon Veterinary Clinic. Russell Harden, who passed away a couple of years ago at 100 years of age, and he was my mentor, and Doctors Hawkins, Nordman, Brandenburg in that practice. They were great people, got me started during my pre-veterinary days. Came to Purdue as a first-generation college student. I really had no idea what I was doing. My dad brought me to Purdue. My housing assignment was Shreve Hall, and he brought me to Purdue in the family pickup truck, and I had a Foot Locker, and everything I owned in the world was in that Foot Locker. And so it dropped me out in front of Shreve. And I was an animal sciences student at the College of Agriculture. And fortunately, I ran into some great faculty and staff there that got me started. I wanted to become a veterinarian from the time I was a freshman in high school. And at that time, if you lived in a state with a veterinary college, that was your veterinary college. And if you didn't get in there, you didn't go. Well, now you can apply all over. So I matriculated through the animal sciences program, and after 3 years in undergrad, I was admitted to the veterinary program. So I started there. I finished that program, and then actually my objective was I was going to go west and work the ranches, the beef cattle ranches in the west. In my pre-vet days, I worked on a ranch in Nebraska. In my senior year of the veterinary program, I worked in a veterinary practice in St. Francis, Kansas, which is very northwest Kansas. And I enjoyed the beef cattle work. I thought, well, maybe I've been a little narrow in my focus. So I always enjoyed working with people and people who appreciate animals. So I began to look at state service and ended up with the state meat and poultry inspection program. And after a couple of years there, I moved to the Board of Animal Health and actually ran the swine health programs. Even though I had an interest in cattle, I ended up in the swine health programs and ran that during the pseudorabies eradication program years for 7 or 8 years before becoming state veterinarian. So, and then I don't know where the years went, but great people and great projects, animal disease control initiatives. We picked up meat and poultry inspection, dairy products inspection. So we became increasingly involved in food safety. We did all the cruelty and neglect investigations, and unfortunately those exist. So whether it's starved horses or dog hoarders, et cetera, we became involved in those. And so it's busy with all sorts of activities, dealt with a lot of great people at the Board of Animal Health. We picked up the Board of Veterinary Medicine, which was the licensing board for veterinarians, registration board for veterinary technicians. And then I was nominated for this position at Purdue and said, you should consider applying to become dean of the veterinary college. And so I went through that process, and on November the 4th of last year, I started as dean. I closed out as state veterinarian at Friday on midnight and started this duty on 8 a.m. Monday morning.
Wow.
So it's been absolutely great. I am really enjoyed it. It's like coming home. Purdue has been so good to me, and again, wanted to come back and contribute to the veterinary program. So yes, it's a fascinating journey, but there are a lot of great people along the way have been my mentors. You know, I often hear about mentors for students, and it's very important. But I also have mentors at my stage of the career. You always have people that you're working with and you look to as mentors. And so I've had great mentors over the years through all stages of my career. And here I am, and I'm enjoying it. I've been at it about 4 months now, and my key still fits. So I guess I'm still here.
Well, that's awesome. That's, what's the single biggest surprise that you've had since you've come back to Purdue and heading up the vet school? What's something that kind of been a surprise to you coming back?
Well, it's, of course, I've never been a faculty member, and so learning academia is new. And so that has been, but I have great faculty members here that have been very patient with me as I learned that process of the university. And it's, of course, I've dealt with government, state and federal government for a number of years. And so this is another set of bureaucracy that you become accustomed to and just have to learn. I tell the story that my first few days here, they told me that I needed to go across campus and get a picture ID. I said, okay. So I walked to Stewart Center on campus, and they said, well, sit in that chair right there. We'll take your picture. In just 2 or 3 minutes, we'll get a picture ID for you. And sure enough, in 2 or 3 minutes, I had a picture ID. So I said, well, I understand here in Stewart Center, I can also get a parking permit. And they said, yes, that's correct. If you drop to the lower level and go to the west end, there you can get a parking permit for the campus. So I went down there, and sure enough, I went in and they said, do you have a picture ID? Oh, yes, I have a picture ID. It's just newly minted.
Yes.
It's just been given to me. So she worked at her computer a little bit, and she looked up at me and she said, well, you have a picture ID, but you're not in our system.
Oh, no.
Therefore, I can't issue you a parking permit. And I said, well, okay, I understand. I'm a new employee here on campus and just needed a parking permit. And she said, well, actually, I could issue you a guest permit. And I said, okay. But she said, I'll need a letter from your dean.
Oh, my. That's awesome.
So I asked her if she had a napkin there. I could scroll something out for her. So it's been fun in a lot of ways to come back to the campus and become involved in it. But again, a lot to learn. It's a new process to learn the College of Veterinary Medicine, how the college interfaces with the overall university. And so it's been a great 4 months, and looking forward to several years.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah. So are you in possession of the coveted A permit today?
I have a coveted A permit. That's correct.
It only takes you 40 years to get one, and be the dean, but you can get one.
You can get one, and it's so again, it's been fascinating and really rewarding. And of course, we have exceptional faculty, staff, and students here at our college, and excited to be a part of it.
That's great. Dr. Marsh, you're also the CEO of the Purdue University Veterinary Hospital, and a lot of our listeners may not be aware or familiar with the veterinary hospital. It's an amazing facility. Listeners can take a virtual tour. I wrote the site down, vet.purdue.edu/hospital. And can you tell us a little bit about that and kind of your role with that position?
Yes, and indeed, it's an exceptional facility. It was dedicated just a little less than 3 years ago, so it's a remarkable facility. Great support from the legislature, the taxpayers of the state, along with donors and Purdue University to put that facility together. It's about $110 million facility that sits east of the Lynn Hall facility, which was the original building. Our original building opened, we took our first class in 1959. So we graduated the first class in 1963, 4 years later. And there have been additions over the years, but to your point, the hospitals are really quite remarkable. We have a small animal, an emergency 24/7 hospital. We have an equine facility that's really state of the art, and a farm animal facility as well. So it's a remarkable facility that's been added. In addition to what has moved into the new hospitals, there's still a lot of small animal functions still in the original Lynn Hall. So our oncology programs, et cetera, are still in Lynn Hall, and we're taking a look at renovating those spaces as we move forward. But if anyone wants to come and take a look, as a matter of fact, we will have Springfest here on campus in April the 12th, and it's an open house here at the College of Veterinary Medicine. So anyone who's interested in coming to see what our programs are about and to see a portion of the hospital, we certainly invite everyone to the campus to take a look. Sal, to your point, there is online. You can take a view of it there as well. It's really been fascinating for me because during our admissions process, we interview students. And in addition to the interview, we give them a chance to meet with faculty and students and tour the hospital. And of course, it's a massive hit. It's really, they want to come to this campus to become a part of the hospital activity over there. So it's really quite a remarkable facility. And in addition to what we have here on this campus, we have the Equine Specialty Hospital at Shelbyville, and it's adjacent to the Horseshoe Track down there. So we have specialty services at that facility as well. So really a remarkable facility, both here on this campus and in Shelbyville. And again, if anyone wants to come and see it, particularly during that Springfest open house period on April the 12th, that Saturday, we'd invite anyone to come.
That's great. I think people would be really surprised to see these facilities. They are very nice. One of the questions I had in related to the School of Veterinary Medicine is, admissions and some of the challenges there. Then also, as a, I've been around livestock my whole life, still a beef producer today, and worked with a lot of great vets. And going back in the day, Dr. Mingle and Dr. Shaley, Dr. Beard and Dr. Lyons and Dr. Phillips and all these guys, different ones around the state, just great vets. They've always just been, terrific with the job that they do. My concern though is a lot of our large animal vets that still have large animal practices are getting up there in years. And what are we going to do in the future? Are you guys able to turn out large animal vets, or it seems like a lot of them are going to the small animals? Can you address that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jeff, and I appreciate you bringing it up. For example, this admission cycle, we had 1,956 applications for 84 positions.
Wow.
So it's like 1 in 23. It's very competitive. We have a lot of applicants, and frankly, just a review to give everyone a fair shake to review 1,956 applications is really quite a lift. But we have an admissions committee who's very diligent about that process that reviews those. And we hear you. In my former role, I used to get phone calls from county commissioners, for example, and they say, Bret, there isn't a veterinarian in the county that'll look at a large animal. And I said, well, unfortunately, you're not the only county that we have this going on in other areas of our state. It's not unique to Indiana. It's happening across the country, and frankly, it's global because the interest, to your point, Jeff, of moving into small animal practice, et cetera. So there are a few things that we're taking a look at. We are looking for students who have an interest in rural or mixed practice. So as those come through the system, we're identifying those because we would like to engage with them and have them come through our program. Our College of Veterinary Medicine is working closely with the Farm Journal Foundation. The Farm Journal Foundation is working in states to determine how to better provide veterinary services in rural areas. So, over the years, we talked about, they can't work in those areas because they have significant student debt. And so that's part of it. But I think it is only part of it because one of the issues that we run into is having employment opportunities, for example, for a spouse. Or maybe it's childcare, or maybe it's internet access, or any of a number of things so that you can continue to operate just like many agribusinesses out across our state to make sure you have those kind of access points to provide a quality service. So we're taking a look at all those. We also, in my former role at the Board of Animal Health, we would nominate underserved areas of our state for what's called the Veterinary Medicine Loan Repayment Program. So if you commit to work in an underserved area, it will pay against your debt. And so there's an opportunity to go that way as well. But I'm excited about the opportunity to work with the Farm Journal Foundation to really begin to drill down and say, so what are some of the issues? Kentucky did this. And in addition to dealing with debt issues, et cetera, they actually made some statutory changes in their laws in the state, including what goes on with their Veterinary Practice Act, to make sure that we can provide services in those areas. There's opportunities to take a look at telehealth and telemedicine to accomplish some of these tasks as well. So we're taking a look at those options. I get a call from a practitioner, for example, who says, at 10:30 at night, I might get a phone call from someone who's not a standard client, and they've got a horse issue. And under the laws of the state, you have to establish a veterinarian client-patient relationship. Well, he's an hour and a half from this horse. And so what do I do in those situations? And these are all fair questions. And again, they're not unique to Indiana, but I think it's incumbent upon us to work together to find some solutions because we do have areas that need coverage. And wearing my old hat, you don't want to miss a foreign animal disease because we just didn't get coverage in an area. That the bird with high path or the cow with foot and mouth disease, et cetera, you don't want to miss those events because they could be that critical one that could be catastrophic for our entire country. So I understand exactly what you're saying. We're looking for those students, and I would encourage them to apply. I think there are some that say, well, it's so competitive, there's no way possible I could get in. But no, I wouldn't take that approach. I think that if they have an interest in this area, come and see us. Talk to our admissions people. Come and see me. I'm happy to visit with you about what opportunities we can provide here through the college.
Well, that's awesome, because that's definitely a need I see out there. And my current vet, I think he came out and treated a cow for me, one of those 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and he had to come out. It's one of those things I just couldn't do myself. And but he also turned 70 shortly after that, had his 70th birthday. So I know he's not going to be there forever. Eventually he's gonna hang it up. So definitely.
Well, and I think to your point, Jeff, I think it's important to exactly that point that livestock owners establish relationships with veterinarians, whomever they have in their area, not just on an emergency basis.
Yes.
Because it's difficult for them to respond if it's just an emergency and it might be 2 hours away or whatever. But to your point, establishing that relationship so you know each other before the disaster, so to speak.
Good advice. Very good advice.
Dr. Marsh, we're going to stay kind of on this topic of just, I guess, how competitive it is to get into the school. What advice? You said you were a freshman whenever you kind of chose a career path. What advice would you give a young person that wants to pursue a career in veterinary medicine?
It's a great question. And I think one of the fundamental things is finding a practice to work in. Spend some time in a veterinary practice. So we have those that have exposure with their own household pets. We have those that have worked in livestock on their farms or other farms, et cetera. But actually being in a practice, if they could get an opportunity to ride with someone in the field, so to speak, or work in a practice, there are those that once they see it from that perspective said, really, that's not for me. And that's important to know whether it's a good fit or not early on. And so I would encourage them to take a look at that and understand. And of course, the sciences are important. The STEM education through high school and into college is important to engage in those classes as well. But I think those exposures are going to be important. I mean, our applicants, for example, have worked in everywhere from zoos to shelters to farms, all sorts of things to gather that kind of experience. And again, I think it's important to know that in advance. If it's really not a good fit for you, then knowing that early on, then you can establish another career path. Because there are those that said, no, that's really not for me once I actually saw it in a clinic setting. But nonetheless, I think that's one of the important, it's one of the factors we look at in admissions on what those exposures and experiences have been. And of course, strong communication and skills, the sciences and your education, GPA is a component of that, your grade point average. So again, through our admissions office or their particular interest, we're happy to visit with them. It's also on our website on what those prerequisites are. One of the things that's disheartening sometimes, we'll get a student who's applied and they're missing a course or two. Oh gosh, and so it's on the website. So watch those closely. And if you need to, we have those that'll pick up a summer course, for example, to make sure they've met the prerequisites, because we don't want to turn people down, these students down if they're applying. And if they know in advance what those expectations are, then they're ready to go.
Very good.
Yeah, that's what percentage of the students that are graduating from the School of Veterinary Medicine, how many of those are going into practice? How many of them are going into research? And I'm just curious myself. I know some go to research, but I didn't know is that a big component of it?
Yeah, we do have several. Most will go into practice. They're looking for practice positions. We have those that go into residencies or interns, so they're continuing their education. We have those that go into the research route as well. For example, students that are interested in research, and of course, Purdue is a strong research institution. We have a summer research program. So those who are interested in that, we can direct them into our summer research initiatives while they're in the veterinary program. But most are seeking positions in practice. They're looking for those opportunities. One of the things that I think is helpful for them, not only I mentioned getting that clinic practice exposure or whatever their particular particular interests are before they apply. But as they move through the program, they have the option to take, particularly in their fourth year, they can take experiences outside of the college. So they can go see, like just as I did, I went to the practice in Northwest Kansas. And so they have that opportunity to take a look at practice types. And that may be in research, it may be in a small animal, it may be in exotics and zoos, it could be a variety of things. But to your question, most will matriculate into a practice setting. We do host a fall career fair. So we invite veterinary practices and those who are looking for veterinarians to join their team. We're actually looking at adding one in the spring as well, because there are internship opportunities for students that want to work in a practice, for example. We also have the veterinary nursing program, so it's an opportunity for them to find an opportunity for the summer as well. But no, your questions are good ones. You're on point. They're the questions that we often get, and particularly when we have areas of the state where we can't get coverage or the coverage is some distance away. And I think it's, again, incumbent upon us to find solutions. And I'm hopeful through things like the Farm Journal Foundation and others, we'll find some that will provide better coverage for our state.
It's interesting. I got a question now that may require you to go back to your state vet former life.
Okay.
But summer will be here before we know it and stuff, and we'll get into the livestock showing season. Is there any changes? I know with and I think we're going to get into that as well. There's with some of the avian flu outbreaks and stuff like that. Are there going to be any changes for the 4-Hers out there exhibiting livestock? Will there be any changes coming up this summer for the livestock exhibitors?
Yeah, that's a great question. I suspect, to be quite honest with you, right here at the end of February, the start of March, that my colleagues at the Board of Animal Health are very closely monitoring that. I know in some states they have restricted, for example, poultry shows and movements, and that's not uncommon. So as they get closer to that season, I'm sure they're looking very closely at that. Dr. Shippen, the new state veterinarian, the 11-member Board of Animal Health, they have the authority to make those adjustments as necessary. To your point, high-path avian influenza is having its way. It's really a challenging virus for us, particularly in the poultry and even in the wild species as well. So it's been challenging. But I would suggest that individuals who are exhibiting animals or any others of interest, if you go on the Board of Animal Health website, you can actually select the items you would like to receive information on an ongoing basis from BOA. Okay. So, for example, even though I'm no longer with BOA, I went on the website and checked the boxes so I can keep receiving the situation reports on what's going on with high-path AI, et cetera. And that's true for anyone, any citizen, anyone who wants to check those boxes so that you can get the most recent updates on what's happening at the board.
Okay, that's good information.
It is good. And that's on the State Board of Animal Health?
State Board of Animal Health website. And again, you can, if you're interested in equine, you can check equine. If you're interested in cattle, you can check cattle, et cetera. And so, frankly, I check them all because I'm interested in all of them. But that way I can keep those reports. So they send out, for example, with high-path avian influenza, they send out situation reports on what the most recent events are. And so that's the way I can keep up from here.
Well, we mentioned avian influenza. Can you give us an update on where we stand with that today and what's going on there? Are there vaccines on the horizon? Any information that you could give us?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, that virus has been really difficult to deal with, and it has struck Indiana in a way it has not before. This is the worst event we have seen in Indiana. Ducks, turkeys, layer operations, they've all been hit in our state, and some states even worse. And so it's really been challenging. It changed a few years ago when this virus was being carried by wild waterfowl, but it wouldn't kill them. But they would carry that virus as asymptomatic carriers, and then we would pick it up in backyard flocks or commercial operations with poultry, et cetera. Now we've ended up in a situation where this virus, as it continues to evolve, it is killing the wild birds too. And so we've seen significant losses in wild populations. We've had a number of mammals that have been diagnosed with the virus. And then, of course, as you're well aware, about a year ago, we ended up with these challenges in the dairy industry. I first became aware of it when a notice came out from the state veterinarian of Texas, and he said something's going on in the dairy herds in the panhandle of Texas, and we're not sure what it is. Well, with some more diagnostics after extensive work, they determined it's the same virus, but it's quite unusual in that when we think about influenza viruses, you and I have had flu, and you think of all the symptoms that go with the flu and respiratory signs, et cetera. Well, that's not how they present in the cattle. For some reason, this virus seems to have a predilection for the mammary tissue, and so it changes the composition of the milk, and the milk can be heavily affected by this virus. So it's presenting in unique and unusual ways. So to your point, Jeff, there's a lot of conversation about vaccine. Is it time to begin to move that direction? One of the reasons there are vaccines that have been available, but the poultry industry of the United States, in concert with the USDA, have not moved into vaccines because, particularly in the broiler industry, they lose their international trade opportunity. And 25% or so of their domestic production goes into international markets, and that would be gone overnight. So I know there's negotiations to keep those trade channels open if we should move to a stage where we need to use vaccine. As it turns out, France has been hit with this same virus, and they decided to vaccinate their duck populations to protect them. But unfortunately, several countries, including the United States, placed restrictions on the trade of duck products from France. And so it's been unfortunate that that's been the outcome. The other challenge with vaccine, just as you and I have it with influenza in people, is making sure the vaccine matches the virus you're dealing with. And as those change, it can be difficult to make sure you're getting protection from your vaccine because the viruses are constantly changing. But yes, it's been a challenging virus. In our state, I feel for the producers because the losses have been significant. And I see that our new Secretary of Agriculture at USDA is talking about some new approaches. And so I'm interested to see what she has in mind and how they might be able to help us.
You mentioned that the flu in the dairy cattle presents itself in the mammary tissue. Is there any concern to people in terms of consuming milk?
No, that's a great question. As it turns out, there were some early studies by the Food and Drug Administration that pasteurization destroys the virus. We've relied on pasteurization for over 100 years for lots of reasons, including tuberculosis and other things. But fortunately, this virus is also destroyed by pasteurization. Therefore, we have presented cautions to people who are interested in consuming raw milk. They need to be cautious about that virus because if it should come from infected cows, it very likely is in that milk. We also have those who are interested in feeding raw milk to their pets, or they get a pet food label through the Indiana State Chemist's office so that they can label a product not for human consumption and is for pets. Now, honestly, whether it ends up with the pet or not is for others to determine.
Yeah, I'm sure 100% of it goes to pets only.
I suspect so. But we've cautioned people to say, be careful, because if it's coming from infected cattle, we have found this virus will kill cats. And so it's lethal. We've had a number of dairies that have had, it might be the first thing they identify is the cat's dead at the dairy. We even had a report out of one state that there was a milk hauler, didn't have cattle of his own, but he went around, picked up milk at the farm level, and came home, and his own domestic cat, presumably because of the exposure on his own clothing to that virus, his own cat died.
Wow.
So that viral load is really great. So people need to be cautious. But to your point, it's safe for consumption because of our pasteurization procedures.
That's good to know. And I didn't know you could kill a barn cat. I thought they were tougher than nails.
I
know those 9 lives.
Well, I guess I think one more question, I guess, on the avian flu is as we were, and I watched the Secretary of Ag yesterday, and she said she's going to have some announcements today. I haven't seen anything, haven't really checked yet today, but right now, depopulation seems to be our biggest tool in the toolbox. Do you think that there's something that'll, the numbers are so big, and it just seems like feels like there has to be a better way, but do you think that there's other tools that we'll have before too long? What's the best preventative? I guess I think I'm sure it takes lots of things, but is there a group of things that would be better to do?
It's a fair question, and one that there's a lot of emphasis and continues and has to be on just biosecurity. Movements of people on and off a farm, movements of feed, rendering, personnel, all those sorts of things on and off of properties. And I know that we have some operations in poultry that have undercarriage washes on trucks, for example, as they come on and off the property. We have facilities that are some of the higher end breeder flocks, for example, in some parts of the country, we have shower in, shower out, just like we have with swine. And so there's a number of measures trying to restrict the movements of not only this virus, but other things into an operation. But biosecurity has been touted and is extremely important. And I think, frankly, our producers have done a fine job. As we visited farms in my former role, there have been a number of procedures that have been changed in order to protect those populations. Frankly, I'm convinced there are ways this virus is moving that we don't quite understand. We need to better understand how this virus is moving in our environment, whether it's the concentrations, for example. If you get an infected poultry site, by the time that virus replicates in those buildings, there's just a lot of virus. And so if it's moving in the wind, on dust, on rain droplets, on any of a number of things. But if we go back to the basics with hands and feet, washing hands, washing foot covers, and have clean shoes or overshoes. We've talked about tires on trucks. I was even up in the Amish community, and I told them, and I said, I'm talking about buggy wheels too. I mean, it's all those pieces. Making sure you're paying attention to those things, that it really can make a difference, because once that virus gets into a community, again, the viral load is so great from those buildings and from those infected birds that that's why we depopulate, frankly. Because if we can, we won't get the replication of the virus in dead birds, bluntly. And so to depopulate them as quickly as possible, and quickly as possible in a layer house is very difficult. I mean, it doesn't happen fast. And so if you've got 1 million birds in a building, it takes some time to get that done. And of course, the birds that are alive continue to lay. So you have eggs, and so you're trying to determine, so it's the manure, it's the feed, it's the bird, it's the eggs. So all that has to be destroyed, composted, to get the buildings clean so you can get them back into production. So it's a major lift. So I know there is some discussion about trying to preserve the eggs off those sites. Can they be washed? And can they be sanitized? Can they be moved so that it's not a total loss? But I think one of the things that's the most challenging is the USDA will pay for the mortality. They'll help you pay for the composting and the cleaning, what we call virus elimination, the cleaning of the buildings to get them back in production. But that downtime, I mean, there's just those empty buildings, it can really be financially challenging to have nothing. And then, as you know, on some of the turkey operations, et cetera, they already know before those poults are hatched where they're going. Mm-hmm. And so if you get out of queue, you can be out of queue for a while. And so it really presents some logistic challenges, and it goes months after you've actually had the infection. So, Sal, your question's a great one. And I'm curious to see what our U.S. Secretary is proposing, because we need some other tools in the toolbox. The losses are so great.
Yep. Yeah, it's a major challenge, and I know no farmer out there ever wants to destroy an animal, and it's got to be just emotionally tough on those guys, besides the financial hit that they're taking.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, Jeff, some years ago, and I've told this story, that I work with a poultry or a turkey producer in this case, and he wept when we were at the farm, and he didn't weep for himself or his family. He wept for the birds.
Yeah.
His job was to keep the birds alive.
Yeah.
And so we actually, to be quite candid, I mean, we always have mental health services and counseling available because it's on your farm. It's in your buildings, and it's tough. It's a very difficult time to see those animals destroyed after you worked to maintain those populations. So it's a burden that way as well. So your questions are good ones. We need better answers and better tools. And I know we have researchers out across the country are working on this every day and around the globe. But we can't miss on the impact on the people, and it's just challenging in so many different ways, and I've experienced it, and it's nothing, to your point, anyone would choose to go through.
Yeah, that's well. Hopefully, we'll get some answers sooner rather than later, and in the
Absolutely.
meantime, everybody will try to get by the best they can. But with that,
Yes.
Sal, you got.
I always have more questions, but we probably ought to give Dr. Marsh. He's a busy man.
That's he may have to go grade papers. I
don't know. I bet he's got people for that. Dr. Marsh, thank you for joining us. And we sure appreciate your public service and now at the university and all you're doing to train and equip the next generation of veterinarians.
Well, it's my honor to spend some time with you today. Come and see us. Would love to have you, and always good to visit with you and share this message. I'm grateful for that because your listeners, I hope there's some nuggets in that we discussed today that would be of value to folks out across our state. It's my great honor to serve in this role, and I know I'm only here for a while. I'm just trying to make sure I take good care of it and hand it on better than I found it.
Sounds great. I think it's in good hands.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Marsh.
Thank you.
Thank you, and have a great day.
That's another episode of The High Ground, powered by Premier Companies. Thank you all very much.